Hello and welcome CNG 124 to Tuesday. Um, Thanks for reading my news announcement for the video being delayed with President's Day. Everyone had school off, including my wife. She didn't have to work yesterday either, so the house was full of people. Starting this week is week 5, which we start to dive into. If you look at it, we start to look at subnetting, and we start to learn subnetting. If you had a chance to see that first video, subnetting is basically taking everything that we've learned in weeks 1 through 4, and now we're starting to apply it to um, a working scenario. Yeah, make sure you look at the how-to step-by-step Class C fixed block subnetting. Once again, we're just doing class full subnetting, um, where we're making sure that everything has a class A, B, C, and then dividing it by there. Um, Later in the semester, a few weeks after we have this mastered, we're going to jump into class list subnetting, where it doesn't matter what class it is, we're going to subnet the network to fit our needs. Um, why subnetting again? We've been out of IPv4 addresses since late 90s. Pretty much a lot of bad decisions, and here's a little bit of history. Um, a lot of bad decisions were made about IPv4 where large companies within the United States like GE, Mountain Bell, um, almost any big company you can think of that was back then, they were just given um, a whole IP range and said, okay, the government says, here you go, use this. And if you do a quick Google search, you'll find out that places get when they got like blocks of 16 million hosts. Yeah, basically 60 million hosts right there. They started doing their own subnetting and selling 10 dots to companies that wanted a higher. If you were a company that had a 191, a Class B, and you wanted, to be closer to the top, you would pay money to that business to get that higher, closer to zero IP address, and they're making tons of money on that when they did that. Remember, serial point connections between two routers only require 2 hosts. Smaller number of hosts with the Class C is 255 addresses, and that would waste 252 addresses. So if we did this connection here with the one network belonging to two routers, we would have a waste of 204. Subnet, basic rundown, types of subnetting, basic subnetting, VLSM we'll learn later. We're looking at fixed block subnetting. It's older, but we have to master this in order to move on. When you're looking at your lab this week, make sure to, when you transition the homework to your home computer, if it messes up, make sure to look at the network online if you can and verify that it's the same. But you want to verify your networks, and I strongly recommend downloading the lab, getting it in a physical format like paper, taking your pencils, your colored pencils or colored crayons, your pens, anything you can come across, and start circling. This is a network here. This is a LAN segment. This is a LAN segment. This is a LAN segment. And when I start to say this is a LAN segment, it's all relative. Once again, when we look at networks, we're looking at, in this terminology, this is a LAN network. This outside network here would be the WAN connection of this network here. But if we break them down just on their connection, just on 2 points of connection, they are a LAN connection. So basically this would be a LAN connection to a LAN connection, LAN connection to LAN connections host, LAN connection to LAN connection host. But if we're looking at it as a larger picture, we'd say this would be a LAN connection with an outside WAN connection, outside WAN connection with an inside LAN connection. So, and this is going to take you, once again, many times, minutes, maybe a couple hours to practice till you start feeling comfortable with it. Many more hours after that till you start being a master at this. Subnetting formulas. Remember, we cannot use the first, we cannot use the last, so we're always 2 less than the total. here we are looking at bits, remaining bits. Remember that in each octet we have 8. So if we cannot use the first 8 that belong to the network in a class A, we have a remaining host portion of 24 bits. Class B, since it's half and half, we have 16 on one side, 16 on the other. Class C will have 24 that belong to the network and 8 that belong to the host bits. And we're going to reflect those within our subnet masks. This video is going to be a little bit longer than most. As we see here, we can have prefix 25 to 30 in a class C as we subnet. Remember, this is only as we subnet. We can't go to a 31 because we'll have no usable hosts per subnet. Yeah, so we don't really go past a 30. We kind of just stay at the 30 and call it the end. So here we are borrowing bits to get the network from 256 down to a smaller number. The default subnet mask for a class C is 255, 255, 255, but we have to get a network that fits. Let's see, we need 64. I'm looking up here. We need a host address that fits 64, and 64 would be this one right here, this 50 right here, because 50 hosts fit into 64 addresses. Very, very close. It's very, very smooth. If we minus our 2, we have 62. So how do we get down to 64? Basically, you start to consume bits, host bits, to turn them into network bits. So we go down to 128. Here's our 128. Here's our 64. 128, 64. Since we've matched that 50, and we can't go, since 50 doesn't fit into 32, we'll turn a 0 onto all those other ones. Our new subnet mask, 255, 255, 255, 192. This number is derived from adding 128 and 64 because those now belong to the network. So here we are again. We're counting off of that segregation, since we know that 50 fits into 64. We're given this network 20. This is the network we start off with, and this is what we're going to start to divide. Subnet bits 00. We're starting off at the very beginning. Here's our network address, 0. Our broadcast address, 63. All of our usable hosts in between, which are 62 addresses, because remember we have this portion here should equal up to 64. And then we start over again. Remember to start at 0, end at 63. The next number would be 64, network address, range, broadcast, network range, or sorry, network address, range, broadcast. We're still wasting a lot of addresses here, and when we start to apply the actual our information to networks, it'll start to look something like this. You see here we have, I'm trying to find it, here we go. So here's our first subnet, subnet 0. You see, okay, the gateway is 1. The hosts are 2 to 62. You do not see 0 and you do not see 63 because those are the network and broadcast. They cannot belong to anything. And then you see it continue over here, 65 to 66. This is just in between, and usually when they're in between like this, you just give them consecutive numbers, 65, 66. This is the third subnet over here. We see it going to 129 and ending at 190. Realize we're wasting a whole lot here, a fair amount here, and just a few here, I think 12 over there. You determine the resident domain by ANDing again. So if you go back to, and we learned ANDing once, this is the same process to get the network address of a given host IP. So it can be any host IP. Basically, we're given this IP here with a /26, so we know it's been subnetted. and then we just start to AND to get the network address at the bottom here. I wish there was a better way to highlight on here. Get used to seeing this and use this template on your homework if you need to, drawing out those 8 lines, those 8 bits to make a byte, and looking at these values. You know, these values can be used over and over and over. You're going to see 128, 126, 128 / 25 all in your first column. Feel free to line these up a little bit better too. I don't know what happens when I move stuff online. 64 host, 62 usable. Number of subnets, as you see here, if we subnet 128, we end up with 2 usable subnets. If we move over to 64, we have 4 usable subnets, and so on. Basically the same numbers in a different direction. Look over here, you see 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. You see the same numbers just move to the side. Good luck this week. It's going to be difficult at first, but keep on practicing. Make sure to get in your workbook first so you can actually start to practice before you go applying that. Where's the review? Right there. Make sure you go to your workbook first, pages 7 and 15, just really getting that practice before you jump into the assignment of that. And that's it.